Hi, I am Stefan and welcome to Animative Space, a place where we create tutorials for beginner artists who want to make games. What we will be doing today is creating concept art for one of the levels of a game I'm currently working on. The first step will be to create thumbnails. Now we shall start the project. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the horizontal lines for what we need to do. And remember, this is just a rough sketch because it's a thumbnail, so it won't be perfect at all. Okay, so that's the first line, and this is the second line right here. Okay, so that's the waterfall, not the TLC version, but the waterfall. Don't go chasing waterfalls. Okay, now we're going to just sketch in some rocks so as it looks a little bit rocky right here. Now add a little detail. We now have a finalized thumbnail. Let's develop it a bit until we get the version you see above, and then we shall add some grayscale. Grayscaling is done for various reasons. One, it allows you to easily add your values so as you can get your forms and shadows down quickly, and two, you can easily change the colors without having to redo the piece. I've already chosen my grayscale values. You can see the 4 circles above going from darkest to light. Now that that's explained, I'm going to use the magic wand tool and block out each area with the values I need. The first area to be blocked out will be the lion's head, as this is the key part of the piece and where the focal points are located. I forgot to mention why I chose the particular gray for the background. It helps the values as well as the shadows and lights to pop more, in my opinion. So that's why I chose it. Now that that has been explained, we'll do a time lapse for the grayscaling of the head. Now that most of the base layers for the head are completed, let's talk about lighting. For this project, the light is coming from a 45-degree angle to the left. So that's why you can see on the left of the pieces, more of the lighter shades are done, and as you go further right it gets darker. Also, certain parts are hidden based on the placement of the work, so I had to incorporate that when it came to shadows and light. Now we shall talk about focal points. An easy definition of focal points is that it's whatever your eye first gravitates to when you look at a piece. In regards to this piece, the focal point is definitely the nose. To make sure the viewer sees it right away, some simple lighting techniques were applied. These included using lighter values so it stuck out more, as well as the glimmer you see on it. Now that the face is lined correctly, we will work on adding shadows to the left side of the face and continuing that. And then we'll add more detail lighting wise. Now that's done, we'll start working on the rocks. And the first thing we'll do is add some base layers to block it out. One thing I want people to know is, like, I know these videos seem like they're done in like one take, but this is multiple hours of work, so don't think that, you know, this is easy or it doesn't take time, because I see a lot of YouTubers videos and it sometimes to me just seems like, you know, everything is perfect when it's not. It takes time to do these. It takes hours. For example, this project took me, I think, 2 months to finish it. So I'm saying all this to say, don't beat yourself up and just enjoy the process. Even I have to remind myself sometimes, you know, because this is not easy. And if it was, anyone could do it. Now, do you want to be just anyone? Not really. Now that's done, we will do the same thing on the other side of the rocks, and then the rocks will be completed. Given the rocks are completed, we're going to hide all the rest layers and focus on completing the clouds, and it's a pretty simple process. I used the standard cloud brushes that came with Photoshop and then blended them using lighter and darker values until I got them how I pictured them. This is pretty much me playing with the opacity until they came out how I viewed them in my head. All in all, the clouds are done and we can now proceed on to the water. For the wave currents, our rough line pattern was hand drawn starting from the bottom of the lion head. Another reason for this pattern is to direct the user towards the lion head, given this is the focal point of the piece. Since we're on the topic of the lion head, let's add more details to the head, as in play with the shadows and light, and then we'll add the sword, as that's another primary piece of the head. Do that really quick and come back. And we're back. The first thing we'll do is shrink the sword, then add it to the head. After we do that, we'll add some details to the water. If you're wondering why I've not mentioned the boat, it's because it won't be focused on in this vid, but in a separate vid that's coming. Now that that has been clarified, let's recreate the rocks. We'll start by increasing the size of the bases. Once that's completed, we'll add some contrasting lines to the base rocks, similar to the patterns you see in the back rock. This will help to lead the audience to the focal point. It's another cool technique that I utilize to do this within this piece. Now that that has been clarified, we'll go back to adding lines to the rocks until we get the perfect version of the rocks that we require. This may take some time. Now that the rocks are completed, we'll focus on the final object, the tree, in this case the tree of life, and you can tell by the anatomy how it got this name. Now that that has been clarified, I can talk about how I colored the tree. Firstly, a gray base was added, and then an even darker gray value was used to define the anatomy, as well as the varying values needed to make the piece one. To create the foliage, a simple base brush from the Antlers grass pack was used. Lighter, darker tones were also utilized to create a contrast within the leaves. You will notice this technique is similar to what we did with the clouds. A few lighter values were also added to the base of the tree so as to accentuate the body even more. Well, the anatomy of the tree even more, I should say. Yeah, to make sure the light accentuations are done right, all I did was just figure out where the light would be coming from. And since we already determined that the lighting would be coming from a 45-degree angle, that means the left side is where I focus most of the lighter values on. Alright, the tree is done, so we can turn off that layer and let's get to add some color. The first thing we'll do is we're going to play with the yellow and red values, and then once we get it right, we'll turn it into a gradient. Now that some of the gradient is added and I can visualize the piece, I think we need to add some low mountains. Yes, let's do that starting now. Okay, let's add the base values for the background hills. We'll make the front colors a lighter value, given that's where the sun will be hitting, and the back darker values, given this will be hidden more from the sun. With the base now completed, we'll make the rest of the rocks using a time lapse. The rocks are done. Let's tweak the values a little bit till we get it right. We'll also add some purple gradient overlays as well as some color overlays to the rocks and the other objects in the piece so as to get the dark values that you see right now. I think we have to play with it a bit more, so I'll be back when that's done. The shading on the rocks look right. Now let's add some shrubs to the top, as I feel that will give it more depth. As the depth is added, we'll now start playing with the values. We'll use red and purple hues until everything blends together perfectly. Then we'll move on to vines. Okay, let's add some vines coming down the rocks, and I don't mean the social media app. Until they look like that. Then we'll add some shrubs as well to it, and now I'm going to do the final lighting changes that's needed. I know I talked about how I got the color of the piece earlier, but I feel like I need to clarify it a bit, so now we're going to talk even more about color and how I did it. So as you can see, for the color part of the video, what I did was I played with a lot of purple. You can see that right here. I added a purple overlay for color, and as you can see, the opacity is about 50%. The following step was to tweak the brightness a bit, so I went here. Thereafter, I added brightness/contrast. This allowed me to set them up as needed, which in turn got me the right hues that I wanted. Since it's a sunset scene, I played with the red and the blue values to get it right. I then added another adjustment layer, and this time I used hue and saturation. Here I played with the reds again just to get it how I wanted it to be. Purple was also modified, and if you check the value chart, you see red and purple follow the same values. Finally, I added a levels adjustment layer, and this gave me the rendered version you see in front of you.